Hello, everyone, and welcome to Board on the Shelf. I'm Antonio, and I am here to talk to you about some board games that I think would make great gifts for the upcoming holiday season. Now is the time when I start thinking about gifts. For some people, that's late, for some people, that's early, but I just thought I would share this video with you so that you can get some ideas of board games that you might want to gift people. For these games, I'm going to be breaking them down into different categories, and these categories are going to be basically for different people in your life. So the first category is going to be gifts for the family or a family. Second is going to be gifts for your strategist friend or strategist partner, or whoever you know that might be into like heavy thinking strategy games, not necessarily a gamer, but somebody who would appreciate something that has a little bit more depth to it. The next category is for the gamer, which is a little bit of a vague category, but I'll go into that later. And the last category is just for a friend, something that you want to give to them and you think they will enjoy. And in general, these games in that list will be just like good games, expandable games. So with that, let's get started. These are going to be the top games that I recommend gifting to people this holiday season. All right, first up we have for the family. Okay, so what I mean by that is gifts that will be good to give to people with a family. And families range. It could be your family, it could be someone else's family, but families range. Some families are really loud and they like to be competitive, like my family, and some people prefer just like a light party game that's like, just casual or maybe cooperative. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first game that I have, and that is Ready, Set, Bet. So Ready, Set, Bet is a real-time horse betting or horse racing betting game. So you can either play it by rolling dice or by having it on a screen and like an automated thing running it. But effectively, there are a set of horses that are racing, and there's a board where everyone can throw money on bets for different horses. And it's real time. So if you put your money somewhere first, say I'm betting on horse number 7, and I bet this much on them, then the other people can't bet that much. And it's a race to see who can bet, on these different horses. And there's a really fun element to it. It's really fast, and everyone's sometimes people are shouting and everyone's just tense and watching the horses and looking at the board. And it's very quick. But what makes it so cool is that you can bet really early if you want to. But, as the race goes on, certain horses might pull ahead and some might fall behind. And randomly, some horses can shoot forward. It's a very exciting experience. And honestly, I'm recommending this game not necessarily on my personal taste. It's a little intense for me, but I really like showing it to people because large groups of people, especially families, just really enjoy it. And, you don't really have to explain too much to them because you're like, hey, we're betting on horses and that's it. This is how you score. And it's just a good time, and it plays with a large group of people and everyone's interacting constantly. So Ready, Set, Bet is really good for a large group of people who just really want to interact and have fun quickly and with something familiar. So that's Ready, Set, Bet. Next up is Men at Work. Okay, Men at Work is a dexterity game. So if your family or somebody who likes Jenga, which I think most people like Jenga, I don't like Jenga. I get really anxious by how loud it is when it falls. But Men at Work is a dexterity game where you're stacking things and moving things around, and it's very crazy as you build it up. But it's very similar. It's like that balancing and the tactical thing of moving things around and trying to make sure it doesn't fall. So if you like Jenga, or if you know people who like Jenga, this is like a great variation of that same type of game, and it's definitely added some complexity. But on your turn, all you do is you flip a card and it's like, hey, put a worker on a beam of this color and he has to be holding a brick. Or hey, put a beam out on the board and it has to be touching beams of these colors. Or hey, you need to balance a beam on these other beams. There's a bunch of different rules, and it's very straightforward. You might need the rule book, to understand what the cards are saying. But it's such a fun twist to those types of games, and I really enjoy it. And I've shown it to groups of people, and my family really loves it. Both parts of my family. And so much so that everyone bought their own copy of the game for their own like smaller families. And it's just so cute. Like you're building these beams and you're putting these little construction workers on it, and the construction workers can be holding, sticks or bricks, and you're trying to balance them when they're leaning. And if anything falls on the ground, you lose like your credit for being a good builder. And it's just simple, and you can easily like tear it down and set it up again. And most of the time, if somebody goes out, they want to play again. And it's just really cool. I highly recommend this for anyone who's just looking for some way to pass time, and it's just goofy. It's a little hard. It's definitely harder than Jenga. It's difficult. And that's kind of what makes it a little bit addicting and fun, is that people want to keep trying again because everyone's always messing up because it's hard. So Men at Work, a great stacking, dexterity, balance game for the family. All right, last up for the family category is So Clover. So I swear by So Clover. I love So Clover. It is a word association game, and it's pretty quiet and it's cooperative. So maybe if you don't want to be as competitive, or your family is not super competitive, or the family you're giving it to doesn't really like competition and they just want to like chill and do an activity, So Clover is great. Basically what you're doing is you have a clover and you have an assortment of words on them. And you have two given words, and you're trying to come up with a word that connects those two words. And you're going to do that 4 times on each leaf of your clover. And it's just really cool. Like you set up your cards and you hide it and you write down your clues. And after everyone's written down their clues, everyone will put it on the table face down. And then you go one at a time, showing your clover and showing your word cards. And everyone tries to guess the correct orientation of the cards and put them on the clover. So they're trying to figure out basically what you were looking at when you wrote those clues down and put it back in the same order that you wrote the clues down in. And it's just really cool. I like it because it's a word game, but it's not like an objective word game. Like you have to think about how whoever wrote these clues would have interpreted this thing. Like the other day we were playing it, and I had my 2 words that I had to connect were vacation and button. And I was like, vacation, button. What the heck? How do I connect these 2 words? And I ended up coming up with book as my clue, because when you book a vacation, you like press the button, like book on a website. They did not get that. My friends did not solve that one, because they were thinking book, like reading a book. And obviously that's a very valid interpretation of the word book. But yeah, you just kind of come up with these clever clues. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but ultimately everyone's just laughing and trying to figure out how you thought when you were writing down these clues. So Clover is a great pastime activity for a family. I really enjoy it. All right, the next category of games is gifts for a strategist. Okay, so what I mean by that, again, is somebody who's not necessarily a gamer, but you know that they like heavy game, or like they like thinking and their strategy people. They're just people like that. I don't really know how to explain it, but you know that they will just enjoy something that makes them think, and they'll really appreciate it, and they'll love playing it, and maybe they'll want to play it with you. So with that, let's get started. The first game on this list is Ankh, Gods of Egypt. It's a big game. So Ankh is a game that I really enjoy. It is Egyptian themed, and it's just a beautiful box too. So when somebody opens it, it just has this like epic feel. And it's expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's very worth it and very cool. There are some awesome god figures in there. They're huge and they go on this board and they just look so powerful. But what it is an area control game, or area majority game, and you are playing as a different god, and each of these gods have different powers, and ultimately you are trying to just control different regions throughout the game so that you can end up with the most points. It's a great 2-player game. As a 2-player game, it kind of plays like chess almost. Like it has that same like head-to-head feeling, and there's your god and your followers that you're moving around the board, and you're trying to take control of temples and pyramids and obelisks. And there's a lot going on. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot going on. But it just feels so satisfying to do the things that you're doing. Moving gods around, you're playing cards, you're going to war with people, and it's just this epic strategy game. So if you know anyone, especially who likes chess, I think this is a great tactical game that I think somebody who enjoys chess will also really enjoy, and it's super epic and really cool. So Ankh Gods of Egypt is very good. Next up is another game that I think is big and epic and really cool, and as a sci-fi nerd, I think this game is awesome because it has a lot to do with time travel and resource management, and that is Anachrony Essential Edition. So the game Anachrony is also a big boy, big strategy game. And what you're doing is you are placing workers on this board in the center to do various actions or get various resources or get more workers, and ultimately you are just trying to score the most points. It has a lot of different mechanisms in it. One of the most interesting ones that I think is like the real catch to this game is the time track. So there's like a round track that runs down the center of the table, and throughout the game you can borrow resources, and those resources can help you do a bunch of things. They're necessary to do almost everything. So you get these resources, and if you want to, you're like, oh, I really need this resource this round. I'm going to borrow it. Okay, so you put a piece of yours on the timeline to say that you borrowed it during this time. And later in the game, as the game goes on, if you don't go back in time, and I mean that literally, if you don't go back in time and pay off the debt or the resources that you borrowed from the previous time, you get penalized in the future. And this sounds really confusing. There is a great mechanism that handles it very well. It sounds way more complex than it is, but it's cool. That is what you're doing. You're borrowing resources in the present that you will then have to travel back in time in the future to pay them off. And that's just one really cool part of the game. But overall, the game is really, really interesting, and you do have to think, and you have to plan ahead, and you know what the goal is at the end of the game, and you're trying to shoot for that, and you get to build out your board to be very asymmetric from the other players, and you get to put out various buildings that give you special powers that other players don't have, that let you maybe travel back in time more, or makes your mechs stronger. And you're putting these mechs out on the board in the middle, and that's a competitive board, so it's a first come first serve board, and you're trying to really predict what other players are going to do, while also really worrying about your own personal puzzle and your own resources that you have to manage. So Anachrony is a great strategy game, and it is a hard one. The reason I do like this though is that I don't think it's super hard to get into. I could be biased because I play a lot of board games, but I've showed this to people who don't play a lot of board games, and the rule set is pretty simple, but it's the synergies that are between all these actions and all these resources that make the game just so cool and so unique. And it's a sci-fi game, so if you know a sci-fi nerd, Anachrony is really cool. So that's Anachrony. All right, next up is a game you might have heard of, and it is a very famous game. It is just getting more popular as time goes on. I hear people talk about this game who don't play other board games. They just play this one, and I just think it kind of blows my mind, because I think this game is really hard to play. So to know that people who don't play board games like it so much is just so exciting, and I don't think you can go wrong with this one. And this is Root. So Root is a game of woodland might and right. And basically what happens is you each take the role of a faction. Okay, so in the base game, that is the Woodland Alliance, the Vagabond, which is not a faction, it's actually just a lone raccoon who goes and wheels and deals and tries to take over the forest, the Marquis de Cat, and the Airy Dynasty. So you're playing as these really cute woodland creatures, and the art is beautiful, and you are trying to vie for control of the woods. And what makes this game super interesting is that each faction you play as plays extremely differently. So you kind of have to learn your own minigame, which is a big thing, and don't underestimate that. That is hard to do. But like I said, if you're giving this to somebody who likes learning and likes strategy, like this is a good choice, because the replayability in this is so high, because you give somebody a faction to play and they will learn that faction, and then maybe the next time they want to learn a different faction. So you can play as all these factions and develop different strategies for each of these factions that you can play as. Gosh, I feel like I've said factions so many times. Yeah, and there are different difficulties for each of the factions. So there's one that's pretty easy to learn, that's just very basic, like move your pieces around, fight other players, and take control of the various spaces. And then there's another one, like the Vagabond, who's just this lone raccoon who goes on quests and tries to pay people off for their allegiance. It's really cute. But I don't know, what makes this game so cool is the variability, and it is an area control game in which everyone's playing their own mini game, and it's so interactive. And you really do need, I think you need 4 people to play this game. You can play it with less, you can play it with 2, you can play it with 3, and it's a fine game, but it really shines at 4 players. So if you're going to gift this game to someone, I would gift it to someone who you think that they'll be able to find a play group with, and they can go to a local game store and, find people. People love this game. So this is a great gift, especially for somebody who you think would be really interested in the hobby and you want to get them more into it. Root is a game that's kind of becoming more of a household name than I ever thought it would, but I'm glad it is because it's a great game. And the other thing is that there are so many expansions for this game, so if they really like it, and I think they will, there's room to grow. You can get more factions and more options throughout your game, ways to expand it. And like, this game's available in Target. I saw it at Target the other day and I was like, Root's at Target? What the heck? And people are playing it. So Root's a good one, and people might know about it and not own it. So I would recommend getting that for them. All right, last up on the strategy list is one of my favorite games of all time. Oh, it's heavy. The Lost Ruins of Arnak. I guess it's not the... So Lost Ruins of Arnak is an incredible game. I love it. It's big, it's chunky, it's strategy, it's fun. You're fighting monsters, you're exploring archaeology, you're doing all kinds of stuff. When I play this game, I really feel like I'm Indiana Jones and I'm doing a bunch of cool stuff and fighting monsters. It's awesome. But in this game, you have a hand of cards, or a deck of cards, and you are playing cards and putting workers onto the board, and those workers will let you do various things. Most of the time, they'll get you resources. Other times, they will let you fight a monster. And there's a bunch of different things going on in this game, and they're all interconnected. And basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to manage your resources to maximize your points. And that is done through managing your deck of cards, which allows you to take these actions and can sometimes give you very strong powers and benefits when taking these actions. But there is a track on the right side, and it's a technology track where you spend your resources to climb up this track, and you'll get benefits along the way. And the higher you get on that track, the more points you get. There's a market of cards where you can acquire cards throughout the game that will give you very strong, very, very strong powers sometimes, and will also give you points at the end of the game. And there are monsters or guardians that you can fight on the board as you explore these new sites in Arnak, and those will give you points if you defeat them. There's a bunch of ways to get points, but what I like about this game is it's so thematic. I find it very immersive, and I feel like I'm exploring, and I feel like I'm competing with these other explorers to, climb this track and explore this region and fight this monster. And it's very tight, and you have to really manage your money and your rubies and your spearheads, all these things. You have to manage all these resources very well, but ultimately it feels like you're fighting for your life sometimes, trying to put together whatever resources you can to, accomplish this huge adventure. And I think this is a very beautiful game, and I think it's a great gift for somebody who would like to delve into these sort of strategy. And these mechanisms in board games are also very strong in here. Like I said, resource management, hand management, deck building, tech tree climbing. There's a lot going on in here, but it's just put together so well, and it's in this beautiful package and this very immersive art style. So Lost Ruins of Arnak, one of my favorite games of all time. I'll never stop recommending it, so check that out. Okay, next up is going to be a very brief category because I don't actually have any solid recommendations for this, which I know sounds silly, but I have some tips. And that is for the gamer, the board gamer, gifts for the board gamer. And I think that in order to do this, I mean, like for me, I have this shelf, that shelf, a shelf over there, a shelf over there. I have a ton of board games, and it's hard for people to get gifts for me because if I like a board game or I'm excited about it, I've probably pre-ordered it or backed it on Kickstarter or something like that. So people don't normally get me board games, which is sad because I love board games, but I understand. So this is an idea for gifts for people who already collect board games or are really into board games and they're just building their collection. Either way, range of things. First off, of course, if you can, try to find out if they already have the game. Look around, ask them. I don't know how to do that. That's always hard for me. But if you can figure out some way to ask if they already have the game that you have in mind, definitely do that. But these recommendations may help. So the first thing that I recommend to do is go on boardgamegeek.com and you can look at a couple things that I think are really helpful. The first is they have something called the hotness. And the hotness is basically games that gamers are into right now. And a lot of them might not be out yet. A lot of them might be really hard to find, but some of them are easy to find and some of them are out and some of them you can buy. So check out your local game store, ask about some of these games. But honestly, you could probably pick any game on there. And if they're really into board games right now, maybe they don't know what it is, but they might. And either way, if it's on the hotness, it's something that people are seeking and you can trust that most of the time. I would say in this case, you can trust it and just buy a game off of there and gift it to them. And they'll probably really like it. If they really like board games, they will probably like to play a new game. And if it's a gift, I'm sure they'll enjoy it. So check out the hotness. The other thing you can do on boardgamegeek.com is you can just go to the board games section of that and you can type, I think it's all board games you click on, and it brings up what feels like never-ending list of the top board games of all time. And that is the Board Game Geek's ranking system for how they rate board games, and they take in community input, recency, and they rank all the games from 1 to however many board games have been made. So if you go on that list, just go down the list, pick anything in the top 100, top 200, top 1,000, maybe not 1,000, but you do whatever you want. But look through those games, start at 1 and scroll down until you see something that you think they might like. And then once you do that, you can check to see if it's available anywhere online or at your local store, and you can buy that for them. And it's, it might not be for everybody, but it's guaranteed to be a good game that a lot of people really enjoy. So I'm sure whoever you give it to, they might have heard of it because it's probably pretty popular and you can get it for them. So I would say look through that list too and just pick some games off there that seem interesting to you and gift it to them, or seem interesting to them and gift it to them. Yeah, the other thing that you can do, and this is a website that I use a lot, it's called GameNerds.com, and nerds is with a Z, and that is my go-to board game store. I've had great experiences with them. This isn't sponsored or anything. This is just what I use. And they have a couple things. They have a deal of the day, which is at noon Central Time every day. And as long as it's not an expansion, you can probably get a really good deal on a board game or card game or minis or anything that you want. And the other thing is they have like bestsellers. So you can go on there and look at bestsellers. And these are normally like heavier board gamey games. And there's also new releases, and you can filter that by board games. Or if they like card games, you can do card games. But I normally go on to new releases, filter by board games, show in stock only, and then I can see what new games are out. And that might be a good bet if you're not sure like what game to get them. You think they might have it, get them a new release, and you can find a game that you think looks interesting, and then you can go back to boardgamegeek.com, type it in, see what people are saying about it, read a little bit about it, and you can gift it to them. So for the gamer or for somebody that you really just want to make sure you're getting them something like a good game, that's a good way to do research. I go and look at some new releases or some bestsellers. They don't have to be brand new, but getting a new release might help you, might reassure you that they don't have it already. So yeah, check that out. Game Nerds, Board Game Geek. Those are like two really great resources on finding quality games. And Game Nerds, you can also buy it through them. And yeah, so check those out. That's my gift recommendations for games for gamers. All right, the last category for this gift recommendation list is gifts for a friend. And this category is very generic, but I don't know, when I think about it, I'm like, okay, coworker, a friend, just overall some like good medium weight games. They're not too hard, they're not too light. It's just a solid medium board game that people won't be overwhelmed by, but they can really dive into if they want to. So first up on that list is Summoner Wars, 2nd edition. So Summoner Wars is a game that I have a lot of content for, and it is a game that I really enjoy playing with my friends because a lot of my friends play Magic the Gathering, or they grew up playing trading card games, collectible card games, whatever. And this game is just so cool because you get to pick a faction, and you get to pick a faction, and each faction is different, and it has its own leader and its own deck of cards, and you're putting these cards on a board in between you two, and they pick their faction, and you just fight each other. You roll dice, you attack, you move around, you use all your special powers. There's a huge variety of factions, and they're still releasing different factions. So this one is the master set, and it comes with 6 factions, and that's plenty. Really, it is. You can give this to somebody, and they can get many, many hours of playtime out of it. And it's kind of similar like what I said about Root. This is a lot easier than Root, but you can change the different factions, and each faction plays so differently. There's just a lot to explore, and the plays in this game can be so satisfying. Like these people are like airbenders basically, and they push somebody around, and that damages them, and they can push them back to somebody else. There's ranged attacks, there's melee attacks, and you're kind of just fighting this battle with these 2 asymmetrical factions. And I just think this game is really great. It's only a 2-player game. I guess I should have been saying that for everything. It's a 2-player game, and you have to play it with just 2. But I know people who do tournaments of this game, and what I like about it is there is a little bit of a deck building element to it, but ultimately, like, you just buy a deck of cards for a certain faction that you want to play as, and that's the deck. You don't have to change it. You don't have to do anything to it. It's balanced already, and you just can play this cool game with your friends. I recommend it, like I said, to somebody who plays Magic or plays any other card games, or they enjoy like chess or any head-to-head battling games. This is just a really fun game that does that very well. Summoner Wars. All right, next up is Unmatched Adventures Tales to Amaze. So this is a game for 1 to 4 players, and it is also a card game. It's actually it's similar to Summoner Wars in some sense, but it is a cooperative game, which is very cool. And this box comes with 4 people. It comes with Annie Christmas, the Golden Bat, Dr. Jill Trent, and Nikola Tesla. And you are playing on this board, and you can fight one of 2 monsters. You can either fight the Martians, or you can fight the Mothman. And it's really fun, and it's cooperative, and it's a combat game, so you're fighting these things, and you're moving around the board trying to heal, complete different objectives, fight the monster's minions that he's unleashing onto the board, and you're trying to survive and cooperate with your teammates. And it's just a ton of fun, and it's really cool. Like, you feel like you're playing as this character, and you feel like you're fighting off these monsters, and you're working together, and you're communicating. The card play isn't too complicated. There's move actions, there's attack actions, there's like spell actions or instant actions that let you just do one-time abilities. If you're getting attacked, you play cards to defend, and it's just really cool. It's really just drawing cards and playing cards. And whenever you're fighting people, you kind of have this like war mechanism. That's what I call it. Each of you put a card face down, and you flip them up at the same time and see who won. So it's really not complicated, but it is tactical and it is strategic, and I think it's such a good system. And the other thing about this is this is the cooperative version of Unmatched. Unmatched is a whole nother world of competitive card games, very similar to Summoner Wars, actually. Not in play style, but concept. It's a head-to-head battler game, and there's a bunch of different characters that you can buy, and normally Unmatched is a competitive game where you're fighting each other, and they have a bunch of sets. They have Little Red Riding Hood, Beowulf, Bigfoot, they have Marvel characters, Sherlock Holmes, Jekyll and Hyde, Dracula. They have all kinds of stuff, and you can actually take those sets of all those different characters, and you can plug them into this cooperative game. So yeah, this game is great. Unmatched Tales to Amaze. I'm really enjoying it. There's a lot of variability in it, and I think it's a great gift for a friend. And like I said, it's not too intimidating, it's not too heavy, it's not too easy. There's just enough meat to it to make it super interesting for, I think, everybody. So Tales to Amaze, definitely check it out. And the last game on Games for a Friend is a recommendation because I think this is such a fun game to play with friends and family, anybody. This is another game that I just will never stop recommending, and that is Modern Art by Dr. Rainer Knizia. Modern Art is a game for 3 to 5 players, and it is an art auction bidding game, and it is incredible. I love it. It is the best for last. No, I'm just kidding. I like all these games a lot, but I really do recommend Modern Art because it has to do with money, and you are, on your turn, you are picking paintings from your hand from various artists, you're putting it on display, and you start an auction. And there are different types of auctions that can be had, but ultimately somebody is going to win this painting. And when they win it, whoever auctioned it gets the money from them, and the value of that artist's work goes up. So there's an economy in this game that is based around these various artists, and as certain artists' paintings are bought, they become more valuable. And you are trying to make sure that the cards in your hand are valuable. So you are trying to dictate the game sometimes and pulling little strings from behind to try and make whatever you sell be very valuable so that you make a lot of money. And also what you buy from other players, you want to be very valuable so that you can make money at the end of the round when you sell your artwork. So what I like about this game and why I'm recommending it to play with friends is because it can be serious, but it's really not. It's silly, and there's a lot of number crunching, and it can get very competitive. So when you're playing a game where you're auctioning off art with your friends and people are fighting over money and people are trying to outbid each other, there's just this very fun lightheartedness that comes with it. And some people can be sore losers, but sometimes that can be fun too. You know, it's the game will end, and ultimately I think it leads to a lot of really fun stories. So Modern Art, definitely check it out. Solid game, very well known, very well loved. Yeah, that's it for that one. All right, everyone, I really appreciate you sticking with me throughout this video. These are just kind of some shorthand recommendations. I came up with these categories and I looked around all my games and I was like, what games would I want to show my friends, like that I wanted to gift to them? What games would I want to gift to a family? And I just picked these out. So I'm really confident in these choices, and I hope they help you. If you want to, I will try my best. Comment some questions you have, like, hey, I have a friend who likes these types of games, and either I will respond or hopefully somebody else will respond too. Tell me what you think and tell me your ideas, and as a community we can probably find some good ideas for some gifts for some people. So thanks for watching. I'm Antonio. This is Board on a Shelf. Bye.